Welcome to developing your academic job application materials. My name is Kay Gruder. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm Assistant Director of Graduate Student and Postdoc Career Programs and Services at UConn's Center for Career Development at the Storrs campus. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in this webinar. You should see your attendee interface on your computer desktop. Typically, it's in the upper left corner. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions by typing your questions into the chat pane of the control panel. You may send your questions at any time during the presentation, and since this is a previously recorded webinar, these questions will be emailed to me and answered within 3 to 5 business days. Note that a recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you within 24 hours. And then there is also a short evaluation that will appear at the end of the webinar for you to complete. In this webinar, we will cover content that provides an overview of some of the most common application materials requested by hiring committees for faculty positions. The content in this webinar is tailored to doctoral candidates seeking faculty positions, but anyone is welcome to join. We will review the most common application materials. We'll spend a little time decoding a faculty job posting. We'll spend time looking at content considerations for cover letters, CVs, research, teaching, and diversity statements. And then I'll share a few resources at the very end. Let's get started by looking at the most common application materials requested by faculty hiring committees in the US. It's a pretty long list. We have a CV, cover letter, or sometimes this is referred to as a letter of intent. We have 3 types of statements: research, teaching, and diversity, letters of recommendation, teaching portfolio, including syllabi and evaluations. Less common, we have writing samples and a teaching video. We also sometimes see a research budget being requested, which is different than a research statement. A research budget should actually be a budget in terms of the costs involved with your research, lab equipment, so forth, and lab setup, so forth and so on. Part of being a successful applicant is to really understand what the hiring committee is seeking in a candidate, and then to provide the materials and content that the committee requires. And more than just looking at how to apply or what to submit, it's really important to review the entire job posting for clues about what is important to the hiring committee, to the university, and to the department. And you will always want to optimize your materials to reflect your fit with the position, the department, and the institution. So let's look at a position, and we're going to spend a little time decoding the job posting. And this is a position in the sociology department, and it is at Grinnell College. So in this slide, we see some special, we see some information here. Let me just look. We see that the position is for a 2-year appointment, and it begins in the fall of 2020. It looks like they would like someone with a PhD in sociology, but it looks like all but dissertation would be possible. Yet down here, we see that the PhD in sociology is a preferred qualification. So you can know that if you apply, the preferred qualification is the PhD, and that's really who your competition is going to be in one respect for this job. It says that research and teaching interests are open, and then it also says experience teaching research methods and statistics is preferred. So again, we see another um, couple of items here that are preferred. So you always want to address the preferred qualifications in your application documents. And then we learn a little bit about the teaching load here, 5 courses over 2 semesters, and then they are directing you to look at the department website to learn more about the curriculum, and there you could also look at some of the faculty bios. Okay, so there's quite a bit of information in here. In this next slide, we see some special instructions to applicants, and what stands out for me in this first sentence really is 3 things. First, they seek someone who wishes to develop as a teacher. So we see that here in the first sentence. This could be in part because it's a 2-year position, or maybe the pay is slightly lower. And it could also just be a part of the culture at Grinnell that they look for people who are developing and eager to learn and work at the institution. The second uh, aspect that I notice is that they are also letting you know that the college is not just any liberal arts college, but right here it says it's highly selective, right? And so I would definitely recommend visiting their admissions page to see what data you might find about the student body. There are other resources to find that kind of data, but often going to the admissions page and looking, sometimes there's a link called At a Glance, or looking at their profile of students can be of particular value. And then additionally, if I was applying, and if I had attended a selective liberal arts college for my undergraduate work, or if I had ever taught at a similar type of college, I would definitely want to include that in my letter. So I would want to show the additional areas of fit that I have with the position. And then also in this first sentence, let's see right here, they talk about close student-faculty interaction. So in reading this, I would want to also feature ways that I have engaged with students, perhaps as a mentor or a club advisor, or even as an individual that attends lots of campus events that students also go to. Um, so just in one sentence alone, you can learn quite a bit about what the hiring committee is looking for. Now, in this next sentence, it says they should also discuss their potential to contribute to a college community that maintains a diversity of people and perspectives as one of its core values. Now, they aren't asking for a diversity statement by name, although you definitely could submit one. They are interested in learning the ways that a potential candidate could contribute to their community that maintains a diversity of people and perspectives, and they say as a core value. So when I see that core value language, that makes me curious about, like, what are their other core values? And I would definitely visit the um, college's website to see if I could learn more about other core values. But clearly addressing this core value in your application is of importance. And, it's really critical when applying to jobs to read the entire ad, even everything about the university or college. And then you want to determine what are the most important aspects of the role and looking at that within the greater context of the department and university. So let's just look at some tips for decoding job postings. You do want to read the entire posting, and it's beneficial to go through and highlight whether you're doing this electronically or on a paper copy, any of the content that seems of particular importance. Take time to look at the knowledge, experience, and skills, and really look at what's preferred versus what is required, and make sure that you're always addressing that you have the preferred qualifications when you do. Look at the action verbs that are used to identify the skills that are valued. So in looking at the job posting, look at, what action verbs they're using to describe what they're seeking in a candidate, and get a sense of the department and university goals and our plans. You can do that by even sometimes doing a Google search that just says strategic plan, Grinnell College, or on the president's page or the provost's page, there are often links to goals or strategic plans for the upcoming couple of years. And then talk to someone who's recently been on the faculty job market, show them the job posting and see what stands out for them as they read it. And research and read any news articles about the university. Sometimes we only focus on the university's website when additionally it is great when you can also look for news articles about the university. You might learn like, oh, they're developing a new curriculum or a course or a department. Sometimes that's in news articles. And then talk to anyone in your network who might know more. Maybe they know more about the university. Maybe they have a contact there. Maybe you have a contact there. When you can talk to someone who is on the inside, who's typically it would have to be someone who's not part of the hiring committee, it can really help you get a stronger sense for what they might be looking for. All right, so now let's look at some tips for a few of the more common application materials. And we're going to spend a little time on each of these documents: the cover letter, letter of intent, it's sometimes called, CV, research statement, teaching statement, and diversity statement. And the goal of this webinar is to provide a few key tips as you write or revise these documents, because really any one of these documents could have an hour-long webinar about best practices for creating them. But the goal today is just to at least begin to provide you with some tips to help you write and or revise your documents. The first document we'll discuss is the cover letter or letter of intent. And let me see here. Basically, you want to tailor the cover letter or letter of intent to the position, and you want to share your fit and what you will bring to the role, the department, and the institution. You'll want to use examples, and the letter can be in a more narrative voice to show your value. The CV is very much a list. Um, you know, you could say, oh, the CV could go with really any individual, but a cover letter is a place where you can share a little bit more of your personality, and you always want to show your value, not list it, because This is a chance for you to really connect with the hiring committee in a way that perhaps is not um, that you aren't able to do with some of your other documents. You want to avoid being perfunctory. You want to reflect and connect around the needs expressed in the job posting. And you typically use a business letter format. Your cover letter or letter of intent might be 1 page, possibly 2 pages in some circumstances. And in reading the job posting, you will want to refer to it to see if they're asking you to write about anything specific in that cover letter or letter of intent. So you might see a request where it's similar kind of to the job that we just decoded, that says something like send a cover letter and include um, the ways that you work with diverse populations. So you have to really key into what they're asking for in that cover letter. Sometimes they just say send a cover letter or letter of intent. Other times they're providing some guidance around the content they would like to see in that document. In your cover letter and letter of intent, you want to show what I call forward movement, meaning don't only focus on who you have been or what you have done, but also focus on where you are headed in your teaching, headed in your research, in your career development and your career goals and plans. Be aware of applicant tracking systems and use keywords. Applicant tracking systems are the platforms that are scanning your documents in relationship to a job posting. These are most commonly used by industry, but we are seeing them used in higher education and for faculty positions as well. So if there are keywords, phrases that are coming up in the job posting, it's great if you can add those to a cover letter. Um, Avoid we. I commonly see cover letters that are written with a we conducted this research, we wrote this publication, and it's true. Sometimes it is a we, and that is okay, but a lot of times there's something that you did that as an individual that can more strongly be reflected. I always say the hiring committee isn't hiring the we, they're hiring you. So it's really important to show what you have accomplished. Don't be repetitive in your content. So for example, in a cover letter, you wouldn't want to say, I have taught X for the past 3 years, because someone can see that on your CV, right? But you could say, having taught X, I have become adept at this and that. And so you're showing that through teaching, you've gained some skills versus I have taught X for the past 3 years. Okay. All right, we're going to move into the CV. And I want to mention that we do have a pre-recorded webinar that is focused on writing a CV. For today's webinar, we're just going to touch upon a few key points. And as you write or revise your CV, it's really important to understand the goals of the document. And there are what I call their goals and there are your goals. So your goals probably include getting your CV read and then strategically featuring your qualifications, skills, experience, knowledge in relationship to the position, and ultimately to try and obtain an invitation to interview. Their goals, the institution's goals, are to reduce the number of applications, compare you on paper to other applicants, to understand your fit, and to consider you for an interview. And what you must realize is that the employer is always, always, always trying to reduce the number of applications. They are not sitting there as a hiring committee and saying, we want to keep as many applications as possible. Their goal is always to reduce the number of applications. As you write or revise your CV, it's critical to connect the dots. And that's connect the dots between what the hiring committee seeks and what you have to offer. You want to stay very attuned to the action verbs that are in the job posting. You want to notice if there are repeated phrases. Like if in the job description it's saying we would like someone who can collaborate, must be able to collaborate, collaborations with multidisciplinary teams. If that word collaborate, collaboration is appearing multiple times, you can assume that that's pretty important to the institution and to the hiring committee. And then see if you can tell what the priorities are within the job posting. Maybe it's to teach certain classes or to be involved in the campus community. So we were able to see what some of the priorities were in the job that we decoded a little bit earlier in this webinar. And then also be aware of the preferred qualifications and make sure if you possess those preferred qualifications that they're definitely reflected on your CV and cover letter. You want to think strategically about your CV format and the content. And let's look at a few more tips. And what you want to think about is what are the sections that you're going to include in your CV? What are the titles of the headings of your sections? Think about the order in which your sections appear. Use an order of bullet point statements within each experience. Use action verbs to begin each bullet point statement, and I'm going to review this a little bit. So the sections you choose to include, you want to think about, okay, in that job posting that we looked at in this webinar, that working with students and community and engagement are really important. So you might want to have a mentoring section if you have mentored, or a service section. Not even might, you definitely would want to if you've done that work before. So that's what I mean about thinking about the sections you choose to include. I mean, on a CV, you can include everything, but a lot of times people don't include everything. So the idea of thinking about, I better have a mentoring section on the CV just to uh, provide a different additional emphasis that I've done that work. And similarly, thinking about the titles and headings of those sections. If in a job posting it talks about leadership, then you might want to have a section called leadership, right? Being really attuned to the words and the position is critical. And then the order in which your sections appear is interesting in that a lot of times individuals come in with their CVs and maybe they're applying for a teaching intensive position, but that's actually not one of the first things on the first page. They'll put in their research interests or something else along those lines. So you really want to order your content based on what seems to be important to the position. So teaching might, if you're applying, might appear on your first page, or maybe research appears on your first page, but you want to consciously make a decision about where the content sections are appearing within the CV. And then a lot of older style CVs just have lists of publications. Uh, they may just list the labs in which they've done research, but the trend now is really to add bullet point statements with the experiences, and I'm going to show you an example here. And this is an example of using bullet point statements. Uh, there are many different formats you can use. This is just one example. So here it identifies the University of Connecticut, Department of Chemistry, location, and then the duration of the position. And then it says research focus, and it identifies what that research is. So just a sentence that really provides an overview of the research. And then we go in and see what the individual has done. They've analyzed some sort of reaction in something to determine something. They've performed a so-and-so test using some sort of method resulting in something. So the action verbs, analyze, perform, created, reviewed, those are the action verbs that show the skills that an individual has, and then how they did what they did. And then at the end of the bullet point statement, you'll see that this individual is also sharing kind of the results. They did this. Why? To determine something. They performed blah, 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 resulting in, so showing an outcome. And actually, I'm looking at this now. I see that the date here is present. So it would be more common to actually have these action verbs in present tense because the position is still going on. So it would be really the rule of thumb is if it's present, the action verbs get present tense, and if it's in the past, they get past, put in past tense. I just want to go back to that actually, because another example here is when individuals have distinct research projects. Another way to set this up is maybe to have project focus number one, and then what that project is, and then what are the skills that are being utilized within the context of that research project. And then down here, it might be project focus two with a little description, and then the bullet point statements that are unique to that project. So I just wanted to add that other format there. All right, now we'll transition to the three common statements that hiring committees ask for as part of the application. And those three statements are teaching, research, and diversity. And we're going to begin with the research statement. In a research statement, you really want the hiring committee to understand a bit about your past, your present, and your future research. And the most common mistake that I see individuals making when they write a research statement is that they're focusing far, far, far too much on the past and not enough on the research that they will be doing at the institution to which they're applying. What you want to understand is that the hiring committee, um, they like I say here, you want to provide enough about what you've done to build your credibility and to support the future direction of your potential work. They're they're hiring you for who you are going to be at that institution, not for really who you've been, but what publications, what collaborations, what grants do you intend to pursue when you're at their institution. Your research statement should be technical, but not so technical that it's inaccessible to readers from other fields or subfields. And this is especially true if you know that you're applying to a position where you would be collaborating with individuals from other academic areas. You really, really have to keep your research statement written in a way that the content is accessible to a range of readers. And those readers might be other scientists, but as we know, there's a lot of difference between the sciences. So it shouldn't be so technical that someone couldn't gather some information from it. And then you'll want to try and link your research agenda to the needs and the facilities and the goals of the department. And it's common to share some potential funding sources that are realistic, and I emphasize realistic for you to pursue. And if you don't know what those are, perhaps your current faculty would have some ideas about that and could share. Additionally, with the research statement, you can use informative section headings throughout the document. People will ask, how long should my research statement be? 2 pages, 3 pages, 2.5 pages. It are It's kind of the most common length. I know in some disciplines, in some of the sciences, a much longer document is appropriate. Asking around your department, asking some of the newer faculty about the length of the research statement that they probably submitted for a position at UConn could be informative as well in determining length. Um, Avoid the use of we, so true in the cover letter, true in your research statement. Again, the hiring committee is hiring you and not the we. And then show a couple of problems on which you've already worked, and then connect them to the greater meaning within or beyond the field. You want to think about, the impact. I've done this research, and you want to answer the question, why is it important? So why is it important to the field? Why is it important to other fields, perhaps, who might be drawing upon the research that you've done? And then dedicate time discussing new problems or questions or new lines of research that you seek to explore. And again, you want to show why these are important and think about impact. All right, we'll move on to the teaching statement. And when written well, the teaching statement really allows the hiring committee to visualize who you are and how you are as a teacher. Sometimes the statement is called a teaching philosophy statement, and in both cases, whether it's called a teaching statement or a teaching philosophy statement, you want to share the philosophy or philosophies that inform your teaching and also share in what areas your teaching has developed. You'll want to intertwine ways that you create an inclusive learning environment, and you'll want to avoid cliches about the passion that you have for teaching. Basically, within that teaching statement, you want to take the reader on a journey through actual examples. So this should not be a list of how you teach. If you say, I set up small groups to establish peer learning, you're telling, but you aren't showing. And to make that a stronger example, you could say, you know, as an example, within my so and so course, we were talking about X, and I decided to use a so and so approach. And all of a sudden, now you're creating this example that allows the hiring committee to really sit back and visualize what it's like for a student to be in your class. And then it's pretty common to tailor part of your teaching statement to the institution and or the department. And I would say this is also true to some extent with the research statement. Often individuals leave a section of their research statement that can be responsive to potential collaborations with faculty at that institution. So really for both the research statement and the teaching statement, pretty common practice to leave some space where you can tailor part of the statement to the institution or department. And then ultimately focus on how you cultivate student learning and student performance and show what's worked, what hasn't. And it's okay to show how you've adapted and how you've developed as a teacher. The last statement that we'll touch upon is the diversity statement. And this statement was not common a few years ago, but with a desire for institutions to better engage with diverse individuals on their campus, this statement is being requested more and more. And basically, the diversity statement features content about the ways that you contribute to and advance diversity. And it might also extend to related themes, including access and equity and inclusion. And you can talk about this in relationship to your research, your scholarship, your teaching, and or your work and service. A diversity statement might also include the ways you intend to advance diversity. The diversity statement is an opportunity to really strengthen your application. It's an opportunity to articulate your understanding of diversity in higher education and in your teaching, your research, and even perhaps your life experience. And as with all the statements, you want to use examples to feature how you've engaged with diversity and inclusion and the impact on you and or others. And it's also a way to identify tangible ways you can contribute to diversity and inclusion at the specific institution. So knowing what's going on at that institution can be very useful too. The request for a diversity statement or similar content appears in many, many different ways. Sometimes it's as simple as send a diversity statement. But in this first example here, you can see that in this application, they're asking for a brief statement about your experiences in teaching or working with a diverse student population. So they don't call it a diversity statement, but they're asking for that sort of statement, but specifically related to experiences in teaching or working with diverse student populations. So this is one way. This is at UCal Fullerton. And here's Kalamazoo College. They're asking for a statement on experience working with underrepresented students and engaging issues of diversity and inclusion in the curriculum and pedagogical approaches. So they're asking for something very specific as well. As you approach writing a diversity statement, it's really great to look at the institution's website. So you can have maybe like a generic foundation of a statement, but this is a statement that you often want to tailor a little bit more than your other statements. And so look at the institution's website, look at the department's website. The university most like or college most likely has an office of diversity and inclusion or diversity equity inclusion. See if there's some campus institutes or cultural centers. Look at the institution's mission and or strategic plan. Look at what's going on in the news around this university or college, and then look at that admissions page to gather some information on the student population. With a diversity statement, you want to create content that's easily modified. Sometimes I see requests for diversity statements where there is a word and page requirement, like 500 words or a single page uh, are are more and more common when requesting the statements. And then think within the framework of a narrative. So this is not an academic paper or publication. This is another time where there's this more narrative voice that you will need and want to use. You want to be relatable to the hiring committee. And then take time to think about what diversity is from your perspective and how it matters in your life and your work and your classroom and your research and within higher education. And then, this is all about doing quite a bit of research in relationship to the particular institutions to which you're applying. It's also taking time to really think about what this all means to you so you're able to effectively articulate it in your diversity statement. Final thoughts about diversity statements feature how you have been a contributor to cultivating diversity, equity, inclusion. Um, if there was a challenge, then think about in what ways have you been part of a solution or a conversation. Avoid false parallels that one thing is as bad as the other or one experience is the same as the other or prepares you in the same way as the other. And then mention any trainings or programs in which you've been involved or created in relationship to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Lastly, I have included some resources that are internal and external to UConn. The Center for Career Development provides guidance and one-on-one consultations on all of the components of your academic job application. So I'm just listing a few resources here. There are many more. You can reach out to me. I can provide additional resources as well. But within UConn, we have, you have your faculty, your advisor. There are, like I've said in the webinar, there are younger or newer faculty to the department who can provide lots of good insights. They have been most recently out looking and applying to academic jobs, so they can be a great resource. Center for Career Development is here to help you, the Writing Center, and the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. And then down below, we have a area of our website at the Center for Career Development that is dedicated to the academic job search, and there are links to lots of materials related to all of these statements, interviewing for academic jobs and so forth. And then the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning also has a very comprehensive page on writing one's teaching philosophy. I know they also periodically offer workshops. And Inside Higher Ed has a number of articles, blog posts over the last few years in how to write an effective diversity statement. So those are just a few resources, additional resources to get you going. This wraps up developing your academic job application materials. And, please consider booking an appointment with the Center for Career Development to further work on your materials. I would be delighted to work with you as well. And as a final note, you'll be emailed a recording of this webinar in the next 24 hours. And there is that brief evaluation that will pop up at the end of the webinar. It'd be great if you could take a minute to complete it. It's three questions. And as always, I'm wishing you the best as you continue on your career journey.